Welcome to episode 10 of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. This time around, we're featuring Roger Joseph Manning Jr., former guitarist. Take two. Welcome to episode 10 of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart. This time around, we're featuring Roger Joseph Manning Jr., former guitarist, keyboardist, singer, and songwriter for the legendary power pop rock band Jellyfish. Roger is also known for his longtime role as Beck's sidekick and whiz kid for the past 17 or so years. Over the years, Jellyfish has become a legend of sorts. You know, they're one of those bands that seems to get talked about way more than they were actually heard or even seen when they were still in existence. This mystique is what I believe adds to the magnetic draw to Jellyfish and their short but important two-album legacy. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to talk with Roger on two different occasions while he was on tour with Beck, so what you're about to hear are two different conversations spliced into one long interview. Of course, that means you're going to get some warts, so you'll just have to get over it. With that being said, it was still a great conversation, and I really had a great time talking to Roger about everything from Jellyfish, of course, his new EP Glamping. We even talked about him standing next to James Hetfield of Metallica at a Dead Kennedys show once. I hope you'll enjoy this episode of Blowin' Wind with the Great Southern Brain Fart featuring Roger Joseph Manning Jr. So kick back and dig it. Thanks for listening.
So welcome to the land of your imagination. Welcome to the land of tomorrow and today. Here is our land of true imagination. Come on, take my hand, and we'll show you how to play.
Thank you for not running like hell when you saw that you had an interview with a site called The Great Southern Brain Fart.
I welcome anything off the beaten path like that. That's fine.
Well, so I have the honor to welcome you to the Blowin' Wind podcast. So thank you so much for joining me, Roger. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Well, so before we get started, I have to really say, my site is primarily rooted in hard rock and metal music. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but I know that as a hard rock metal fan that I am, I've also been a Jellyfish fan, Roger Manning fan for, since Belly Button. So many people that I know of in the hard rock and metal community, the minute they bring up Jellyfish, they all go, "Oh yeah, man, like that band." Do you know what I mean? So was it ever, or is it a surprise to you that people in that community or that listen to that genre of music latched onto Jellyfish in a way that they didn't latch onto other bands that were so non-hard rock and metal?
It is, but not to a great degree. In other words, I'm actually surprised how much of the hard rock metal community are fans. Not that that community took a liking to us. So yes and no. I think that there are sensibilities in our music that simply appeal to that audience for the same reasons they're fans of whatever different types of hard rock and metal that they are fans. I mean, I think there's similarities, and I'm very flattered, frankly, because, as you know, aside from maybe one slow ballad or hard rock song on a metal record, rarely does that community do anything but show its bravado and testosterone and machismo. I mean, that's part of the whole vibe of that genre.
Right.
And Jellyfish, from the get-go, I mean, our very first song on Belly Button is, is slow, introspective, feeling. It's emotional. It has a sentimentality to it.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's all presented in such a way that we seem to penetrate some wall that maybe some rough and tumble metal fan wouldn't normally be willing to go. That's why I think it's such a flattering compliment to have so much of that community enjoy what we offered on our two records.
Because it's really funny, because like I said, speaking from someone, on the inside who, like I said, like I grew up a metal fan. I actually, now in my 40s, I play folk rock music, so things change. But I still am very rooted in the metal world. I listen to a lot of heavy metal. I love heavy metal. But like when Belly Button came out, I was a junior in high school. And so, all of a sudden it's like, you're listening to, Slayer and Anthrax and Megadeth, and then all of a sudden this kid comes up and goes, "Have you heard this Jellyfish band? They sound kind of like Queen and the Beatles." And I'm like, I can get behind that. And like all of a sudden it became like the escape from all of it. Do you know what I mean? And so like for so many people that I know of that were metal fans, but yet they were Jellyfish fans, they all kind of seemed to say the same thing, and that was that Jellyfish was kind of like our back porch when we just needed to get away from all the volume. And like as I got older, the music, the lyrics, everything seemed to penetrate me on a deeper level, and kind of mean a lot to me. And 3 Jellyfish shows later, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, I've never stopped being a fan, and, so I just wanted to let you know that, because I wasn't sure how aware of it you were, but, that you definitely had that effect on people in that kind of world,
I was aware of it to a degree, and it's, again, it's such an incredible compliment. Growing up in the San Francisco suburb that we did, Andy and I certainly, there was a lot of metal and hard rock, certainly was backdrop to our suburban upbringing. But when I really enjoyed a lot of punk and skating pools and ramps with my brothers, as soon as I'll never forget when Show No Mercy came out. Suicidal was a gateway crossover band,
right?
And that proceeded to. And I had some friends who couldn't go there because no, it's too to do that. But I liked the hybrid day. Then the Bay Area kind of exploded with that. DRI went from thrash to more metal, and Death Angel, Exodus. There were so many bands. I remember one of my very first Dead Kennedy shows. I'm drawing a blank. Hatfield. He was standing in the audience next to me. Metallica had even broken. They were a very, very small local band.
That's amazing.
And I can remember. No, check this out. I can remember. I'm standing next to this dude, and he's super much taller than me. So all I can see is his jean jacket that he's wearing, and I'm looking at him like, this guy's got fucking Def Leppard patches and AC/DC patches all over, Dio all over. What the hell is he doing here? He's going to get his ass kicked, And I look up, and he's got blonde, long hair. Well, 90% of the people in that club in San Francisco were, shaved head or skinhead.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, he's really asking for it. And I was like, oh my God, a fight's going to break out any moment. Well, a few minutes later, I saw that nobody was touching him. Everyone was just like, let him be or whatever. And a buddy of mine told me, dude, do you know who that is? Sleep Tenor. I was like, oh, it all makes sense, because they already had so much respect in the hard rock and local thrash punk scene and stuff. But my whole point is that, Jellyfish, we chose to kind of write in the style that we did, but we were heavily influenced by all kinds of genres of music. For crying out loud, our producer, for Belly Button, he produced Saturday Night Fever, the biggest disco soundtrack of all time. And,
yeah, right, yeah.
And, I brought a lot of well, me and Jason Faulkner, I'll say, brought a lot of punk attitude and energy to what we were doing. Andy brought a lot more the classic hard rock. And my brother Chris, you know, I mean, he liked reggae, so it was like it was all over the place. And then of course we all bunked Beck and Queen and all that great '60s psych pop that we shared in common. But yeah, I mean, you can't have the energy and the kind of just heavy attitude. You know, there is a take no prisoners approach on those records, just in the way any Def Leppard album would have. And you know, I know there's even a part of the metal community that doesn't even consider Def Leppard heavy metal or hard rock unless you're looking at the, you know, first couple albums or something. But
right.
Anyway, it's all you take. I always have this phrase. It's like, I don't care what genre you're talking about. I kind of like it all, but really I only like that kind of cream of the crop 5%. The rest was just people trying to copy everybody else, and the songwriting's not as good. But those, you know, 4 or 5 artists at the peak of pioneered all those genres and kind of became lasting icons in those genres. All that shit influences us. I stumbled onto an AC/DC documentary I didn't know about the other day. And it was all about the making of Back in Black and everything that was going on behind the scenes and in the studio. So, for example, I had no idea that they had already started recording Back in Black and had all the songs laid out when Bon died.
Right.
I thought he had died way before they even started that record.
Right.
And I was trying to imagine that totally just sideswiped. I was trying to imagine being in their position and finding the courage to carry on, and then like being even inspired to write and arrange, you know, what I feel is probably their best record, and I like a lot of their albums. But to me, that's still the best classic AC/DC album. In spite of all that stuff going on, I was just like so blown away. Anyway, I was just reminded too, what an incredible group of songwriters and performers they were, and how that's just like, where those caliber of people and musicians and craftsmen. I don't care what genre you're talking about. They happen to be in the hard rock genre, but they just fucking killed it, and they absolutely proved that when that album came out. Because was it Highway to Hell that's right before that album? I don't remember the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, they'd obviously made a bunch of noise on that record and were starting to get more attention, but they weren't the international, you know, global dominant hard rock band that they became after Back in Black.
Right, exactly.
And they were poised for that, but it was like still hadn't quite gotten there. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, it's all about the cream of the crop. Those bands and songwriters that go that extra distance that leave everybody else in the dust, and that's what we were trying to do on those Jellyfish records. Certainly, it's just really, really leave no stone unturned and kick it as far as we could, and you know, operating within those kinds of 60s, 70s sounds and genres that we enjoyed writing in.
And you totally did, because, like, it's so funny. It's like I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who's a big Jellyfish fan, and I'm one of those guys that, like, when I fall in love with a band, it's like I want, you know, like I want, and this is even from my early age, like I want everything, dude. I want the bootlegs. I want the shitty recorded VHS back of the room concert. You know what I mean? So like my Jellyfish collection is like disgusting. You know, like I've got like bootleg DVDs. You know, just, you know. So forgive me for having the bootlegs, but just to show you that
all good.
The power of that band to me was something that, like, you know, I just could not get enough of. And then, you know, you guys came in, 2 records. I'm thankful I got to see you guys the times that I did at the Cotton Club in Atlanta and at the Masquerade Music Park in Atlanta. Those were the 3 times I saw you guys, and you know, like seeing you guys live, and it always struck me though that like what was it that took you in that direction? Is like, I mean, because age-wise, you guys were all the same age as your peers who were heading into like the thrash skate punk direction. What was it that took you into that total other fork in the road to do where you were? Because you guys could have easily, because of your musicianship and your skill, probably could have been a great metal band. You know what I mean? But like, well, but like, you know what I mean? But like, what was it that took you into that direction?
Well, I mean, you're kind of right. We were surrounded by, we actually, me and all my colleagues should have been some version of a grunge band or something.
Right.
I mean, I certainly loved Soundgarden and Nirvana and so many of those bands, even before there was a name for that scene, because it was, bubbling up there in Seattle as early as 86, 87.
Right.
But no, I think the thing that all four Jellyfish band members, and then certainly the two other gentlemen that joined us on Spilt Milk, again, we grew up with hard rock is a big part of our suburban upbringing, but at some point we came to terms with the fact that we were very much, or equally, if not, and maybe even more so, in touch with that kind of sensitive, softer, emotional side that led us into things like listening to lots and lots of Beach Boys and the more McCartney than Lennon side of the Beatles.
Exactly, which I always have to say, I'm a McCartney dude, so I always appreciated that,
Well, I like everything that every guy in the band ever contributed, but it's kind of
right.
Like at some point when you sit down to write your own stuff, you're like sitting there going, wow, these aren't really Lennon-y tunes. These are more like McCartney ballads or whatever,
Right.
And as you're learning to discover yourself as a songwriter, bands like XTC, certainly Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren's a perfect example because by the time I discovered him in the early 80s, he'd already been around for 15 years.
Right.
And he had done everything from have bands to have solo records. And if you listen to his albums, they're all across the board. He's got slamming, aggressive hard rock songs right back to back with almost like a Motown psychedelic soul ballad.
Right.
Back to back.
Yeah. And then he'd go into some sort of computer noise. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that really inspired me personally. And so the other thing that happened for me and Andy, not so much Jason and the other guys, but Andy and I certainly got into jazz for a while. I mean, I still am into jazz, but I chose not to pursue a career in it.
Right.
But certainly in high school, lots of study, my junior and senior year were almost entirely absorbed in jazz with the occasional punk rock record or Talking Heads and Peter Gabriel record that were in there. Mm-hmm. And then sometime in college, it just became clear to me that, as much as I loved Herbie Hancock, I loved the Monkees.
Oh my God, I'm a huge Monkees fan, by the way, too.
Well, yeah. So I don't need to explain that. And as much as I liked Steely Dan, I liked The Damned.
Right.
So it's just, and then trying your best when you sit down to write songs and present them to your bandmates and collaborators that those, what I liked about those groups in particular and those songwriting, is that coming out in my songs
right.
To the same degree where you have a confidence in it. You're going, I remember being in college and I could play quite well and I could transcribe solos of my heroes and I could figure out any song I wanted very fast. Jazz allows you to do that.
Right.
And I really enjoyed improvising and jamming, soloing over jazz music and stuff. And I realized that, the funnest songs for me to jam over were the ones where I actually liked the song the most because they had the coolest chord changes. And I said, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to write an original piece of music. And I felt like a complete imbecile, like I couldn't do anything. And I tried to sit down and write simple songs, just like I was trying to write songs like the Byrds. I really liked them.
Right.
And I was like, my God, I can't even do this. I can play anybody else's songs, but I can't come up with a completely original melody and groove and that I thought was any good.
Right.
And so I almost immediately stopped practicing jazz and went, 1,000 miles an hour into, I've got to learn how to write cool songs like my heroes.
Right.
And that is still an obsession. Write a better song than I did before.
Right.
But somewhere after doing that for about 3 years straight, just trying and showing ideas to Andy and just keeping all the ideas to myself, I finally wrote a tune one day, a chorus song, like verse chorus.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, that holds up. That's it. I think it's very solid. And I think it's as good as anything I hear. But it's very, very bizarre feeling.
Right.
For 2 seconds to go, yep, I just wrote something as good as Paul McCartney.
Right.
That's weird. It's super weird because you put these people on a pedestal for so long, and then you have to remember, well, but they're just craftsmen doing their best every day when they get up and try to write the song I do. And I knew after about 6 months of still and being those are the worst critics in the world. You can play a song for a stranger, but you play a song for your best friend, you hope to God he likes it. And the kernel of that song became the song Bye, 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 actually.
Right, because that was a very early on song that actually didn't surface until Spilt Milk, but that was a pretty early song for you guys.
You're correct. And
again, I heard those in the bootlegs. That's how I knew it.
Yeah, no, that's what. Yeah, and so Andy enjoyed it enough that he wrote the complete lyric to it, and then we fleshed out the arrangement together. But it's really, really learning this whole journey, as you know. I mean, you probably dabble in your own projects and stuff. It's a whole journey of self-discovery and being patient with yourself and having compassion with yourself because you're sucking a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And you have to go. I mean, just again, watching AC/DC, dude. Like any of those songs off those records, they're timeless pop classics, and I guarantee you that shit doesn't happen just falling out of bed. You gotta craft it and hone it, and you gotta have a producer like Mutt Lange sitting there and going, "It's not good enough yet, guys. It's not good enough. Let's keep massaging it. Let's keep trying new ideas." I'm not saying there haven't been great Rolling Stones songs like Parachute or something that Keith Richards didn't write in 2 minutes, but I mean, it's really continuing to raise standard. And a lot of people had a difficult time working with Andy and I because we kept raising the bar so goddamn high as far as they were concerned. Andy and I felt we don't want to share anything with the world unless it's this good, unless it passes our test. Why bother? And it's going to be hard for us to go out there and go, hey man, we're going to fucking enjoy dressing up and have these crazy videos and have all this theatrical sensationality. And that's all fine and good because it's an extension of who we are, but we better have the content to back it up. These songs better just be, what's the phrase? All killer and no filler, because you don't have, why bother with, that wasn't for everybody, and
unfortunately a lot of bands don't adhere to that, and that was one of the things that I always loved about Jellyfish, especially because, like when I talk about and by the way, just so you know, I'm not going to just dwell on Jellyfish. I've got an order of operations here. I'm segueing, so I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. But
no, that's all good.
But one of the things I always like to tell people is like when I look back on the Jellyfish catalog, and I think to myself, like, those guys left behind 2 albums that are better than most bands who have made like 10, 12, 15 records, because like that was that whole, like you said, that no killer, no fillers, that when I listen to Belly Button and I listen to Spilt Milk, I just think to myself, like, like, I get where you're coming from, but also as a songwriter, I also understand that, like, my band plays 20 songs, You know, like we have 20 songs in our
Yeah.
repertoire. I've written probably 75 to 100 and something songs. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So, like the ones
Well,
that I think are just like okay, I'm not gonna present to people if I don't think they adhere to the quality of the other songs that we're playing. You know what I mean? And so,
oh, I hear you 100%. You may or may not be a Kiss fan, but they're certainly a big inspiration on all of us. And I just found out about some interview literally like a year ago. It was from the 70s or 80s, and somebody was interviewing Ray Davies, the Kinks, their main songwriter, of course. And he was saying, "So, man, you lived through the 60s. What was it like? You know, all the free love and drugs and partying and just like different times, right?" And he goes, "I couldn't tell you." He goes, "Lived through it." He goes, "Yes, I was alive and I was a young man in those days, but I was locked in a room trying to figure out how to write songs." He goes, "All my friends were parties, and he goes, of course I enjoyed myself, but you know, if there were 10 parties that week, I maybe went to one of them. The rest of the time, I was locked in a room going, how are we going to kick everybody's butt and write great tunes and beat the
right.
beat the Who? How are we going to make a name for ourselves?" And he goes, "I would just sit there and try and try and try. It took me forever to get ideas that I felt were good enough to bring the band. I was just sitting there, I just went into tears."
Oops, I think I lost you. Hey, Roger.
History, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
I lost your connection there for a little bit. You were going in and out.
Oh, crap. How about now?
That sounds perfect now.
Well, I don't know where you lost me in my babbling, but I think my point was made.
No, but I totally get that, because that's the whole thing about, like, you know, like you said, you work so hard on the craft of songwriting that, you know, and you know, I've always wanted to ask you this, especially when it came to the first two, you know, the Jellyfish albums, was that when you guys went in, because obviously, you know, there was Beatnik Beach before Jellyfish, and which kind of led into Jellyfish. But when you guys went in to make those records, did you guys just go in and say, like, we're just cutting the good shit, or is there like a plethora of like in other words, is there like a stockpile of goodies that you guys are sitting on that one day we're gonna get to hear, or did you guys just go in and, because, you know, like, I've heard of bands like the Black Crowes where they went in, they were like, we cut the 12 songs that were on the album. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever.
Right.
You know?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean, basically, unless Andy and I felt good about an idea, we didn't develop it into a demo. And almost everything, I think 90% of the two records that you hear were demoed up first by us and our bandmates. So everything else, we either felt just didn't have the strength or the time. It wasn't good enough to spend the time demoing it. So a lot of those unfinished ideas, for what it's worth, I took my good chunk of them and developed them into the solo stuff. Wish It Would Rain, for example, was an unfinished idea that I believed in for a very long time. The Land of Pure Imagination, both songs off my first solo record, that was an unfinished Jellyfish idea. But they were my portion of the offering. It was either something I presented to Andy, and he may or may not have been inspired by it, but for whatever reason, we didn't pursue it.
Right.
So it's literally been sitting on a shelf forever. And they wouldn't leave me alone. I was like, gotta finish them. I gotta figure this out. So a lot of those became solo record ideas, including stuff on glamping, which we now have 5 minutes to talk about.
I know. Actually, that's what I was going to...
That's my fault.
I was going to... No, this was great. I was actually going to segue into the solo material because, obviously, Solid State Warrior was a huge album for me, because when I heard that, to me, like, right away, I was like, for some reason, I was like, wow, this is like the Jellyfish album that never got made. But then Catnip Dynamite kind of came out and sounded a little less like Jellyfish and more like you developing your own sound. So going into glamping, though, are you finding that you've developed a little more from it? I mean, but there's always going to be a piece of Jellyfish there because you were such an integral part of the creative process in Jellyfish. So obviously, there's always going to be some carryover in what you do. But how do you feel about glamping as far as like the creative process compared to, like, say, Solid State Warrior?
Well, it's just been very similar. Again, these were ideas that had been. None of this material is necessarily new, like written in the last couple years. It's all from the last 20 years. But very often it'll be like, okay, I really think this is a strong chorus. I better figure out how to write a verse and a bridge and a lyric around it. And that's what leads the way. The only thing that's really different on this set of 4 songs that I used and invited more of my music friends here in Los Angeles to contribute to the record in an attempt to speed up the process.
Right.
But as it turned out, my freelance life, thankfully, has been so colorful and busy. I started this record in 2012, 13, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's only 4 songs. I mean, I've got another 8 songs that are half finished, and they will continue to be released as EPs and what have you over in the months ahead, because I'd like to continue giving the Pledge family and all these incredible fans that have come to this particular party for glamping. I want to feed them music sooner than later. So I'm really hoping that every 9 months or less, I'm getting a new batch of songs out to them instead of waiting another 4 years for a 10-song album.
Which I think is such a great way to release music, and especially over the years that I've been doing music journalism and stuff, I've noticed that tends to be a trend with some bands, is to release fewer songs but over a shorter period of time, as opposed to putting out like, here's a 10-song album, we'll see you in 4 years. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And I kind of like that because it kind of gives you something. It's kind of like getting a new magazine in the mail. It's like you always look forward to the next issue coming in a shorter period of time. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So, but one of the things I did want to ask you, and this is obviously something that I'm sure you get asked a lot, but like my readers and listeners love to hear this, was that in 2008 you reunited with Jason Faulkner at the Fuji Rock Fest, which was fucking fantastic. You guys did, oh my God, what was it? That Is Why, which I thought was amazing. How hard has it been to fend off the idea of doing a Jellyfish reunion, or even doing what I call fake reunions? Is when when three original members get together with one guy, which, again, no offense, sometimes it can be great and sometimes it works out great, but like, has that ever been a thought to you, or is it kind of like an all or nothing for you as far as like a Jellyfish resurgence?
Well, anytime anybody asks me about that, it's nothing but a compliment to me that anybody cares enough at all that they want us to reform and make some more music. There's not enough band members who are united to want to do that. It has to be everybody.
Right.
We would never. You can't replace anybody or bring the fake Filipino singer in like they do for Journey or whatever. As talented as that guy is, and as credible a voice as he is, that will never be Journey to me, for example. Right. But so we would never do something like that. Glamping
is absolutely amazing. Like,
thank you so much.
I'm sure you've heard this from people that have heard it already, but it doesn't seem like you missed a step at all. Like, between, especially from like Catnip Dynamite to like there seems to be like no kind of break in time, but at the same time, it still sounds fresh, it still sounds new. But one of the things I was really aware of was that, too many times, and I'm sure you've noticed this as a fan of music, is that certain artists, especially when they've been doing it for a long time, they try to do things like reinvent themselves, and they try to, change the way they do things or something. But it almost seems like that with you, like it's almost like I know what to expect, but it's still exciting. Is that kind of like how you approach this? Is it like it's kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of formula?
Well, I mean, ideally, I get to do what comes naturally, and that songwriting style is pretty. It's what naturally works. Like, if I don't put a lot of thought into it, I'm just screwing around and coming up with ideas. Now, I mean, I can put my mind to whatever, and I can, use my musical training to mess with any style I want, and I certainly have for other jobs and stuff. But, when I sit down to write pop that I like to sing, it's kind of in that 60s, 70s vein, and then I just go to town arranging it, which is a lot of fun for me.
I mean, being that you were like, one of the creative, basically, I always like to refer to you as the whiz kid of Jellyfish for some reason, because I always thought you always reminded me of a wizard back there behind the keys with the guitar and all the toys and stuff, and like, but like, so it shouldn't be a surprise then, I guess, right? That like a lot that, especially of the 4 songs, it was the last tune. Oh God, it's the one about the cowboy. What is it called? I'm so sorry, I can't remember.
I'm Not Your Cowboy.
I'm Not Your Cowboy. Like,
yeah.
I heard that and I was just like, that could have been like a lost Jellyfish tune to me, So it's always a treat for me to like listen to your material and just say, there's still that magic there, But at the same time, it's you. It's not you trying to be Jellyfish. You were part of Jellyfish. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, you heard my personality come out as much as anybody's in the group. Mm-hmm. Andy and I wrote a lot of the songs together. Mm-hmm. Or we brought each other unfinished ideas. Fortunately, our songwriting personalities for those few years merged into one identity. He certainly wrote all the lyrics as well as music that we partnered on. But a lot of the arranging and stuff we did together, but often I put the pen to paper and kind of worked out the mechanics.
Right.
So you're hearing a lot of that arranging fun and the same personality that did it all those years ago. And a lot of the ideas that you've heard on my solo records are a lot of leftover ideas that I had during the Jellyfish years. We just didn't, for a variety of reasons, you can only put 10 songs on a record, 12 songs, so we couldn't record everything. So there were a lot of unfinished ideas sitting around, and if they've stood the test of time for me, I've realized a lot of them on these solo records. That was part of why I wanted to do this, is I just believe in these ideas. I wanted to share them.
So why only 4 songs? I know the less is more concept, but when I got done with that 4th song, I was like, Roger, I need like 6 more.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I actually have 8 more that are in the works right now, and I started a 12-song album, but I started it in 2012, and it just wasn't getting finished. I had to bring people in to help me try to speed up the process, which didn't really speed up the process. I got some good stuff, but I knew what I wanted, and sometimes it was exactly right, and other times I had to massage the other people's parts to get what I wanted, just because I'm so specific, and I didn't take the time to train myself on every instrument. So that's, the way it goes with that. I figured, well, man, if I don't concentrate on the 4 songs, I'm never going to get this thing out. And I really wanted to just get the machine moving. Because the whole point was, if I had a successful pledge campaign and the whole kind of model made sense, then I would continue with that model down the road, and just, get EPs out so I could get people music every, 9 months or something, instead of having everybody wait 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
That seems to be a very successful way of doing things these days. I've noticed is that bands. I think we kind of talked about that the last time. Is that bands putting out, kind of realizing that the listeners' attention span these days are like so short and quick, but that like at the same time it's like you give them 4 new songs, every so often instead of giving them 12 every 3 years. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like it's almost like a subscription. Like it's like you're getting this awesome magazine every month, or whatever, or however every so many months, But
you're right. It's more like that.
But the Pledge Music campaign seemed, I used to go back and forth with with how I felt about, crowdfunding and things like that, and of course, being a musician myself, the more I've seen it, the more success I've seen with bands that doing it, because it really is about just kind of claiming control over your product and how it's put out. So, do you look at something like this now and go, like, I wish this would have been around in the Jellyfish days? Like, and do you think that maybe Jellyfish would have had a different kind of experience had this kind of campaign been available?
Well, I think this campaign works best for a certain level of artist only.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily, excuse me, I don't necessarily suggest this for brand new bands. Part of why this works is that there's got to be some notoriety in people who've had some previous experience with you, and ideally a positive one, for you to, coalesce everybody, gather them around, and for this forum to work, because there's a lot of trust in this exchange going on between artist and fan, particularly where some of the unique incentives are concerned. The music only becomes one part of this activity. It's a lot more interactive than a record company could ever be. Obviously without the internet back in the day, and you can't do half the stuff that we've been doing on this campaign. So,
right.
I don't think it would have helped Jellyfish or any upstart band. I think it really works. Again, like I said, for artists who have some prior experience and have already kind of won people over. In other words, they've already some of them already have gotten the ball rolling, and I do have the major labels to thank for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've got the 20 plus years behind, under your belt also of like, accumulating fans who are very familiar with your work from, all through, whether it was with Jellyfish or whether it was with like, the Mo cookbook or things like that, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you said, like I loved in your video how you said it was kind of like inviting your fans to be a part of this journey with you, so it really does kind of go beyond the fans just buying a new album. It goes,
absolutely.
It becomes a part of helping you create something that, at least I know for me as a fan, am gonna absolutely, love knowing that I was a part of it,
Totally. That's the idea. So that's great to hear.
So you have been with Beck for a while, and I'll be honest, I'm not a Beck follower. I don't know a whole lot about him though, but I know that you've been involved with him for a long time. Is it kind of nice to be stepping back out again and kind of saying like, oh, I get to do my thing now a little more than usual?
Well, of all of the incredible things I get to do in the music business over the years, the Beck Band being one of them, and supporting other artists as well, of various styles and degrees. The most gratifying thing to do for me has always been realizing and actualizing and seeing through fruition original ideas. You just have more of your heart and soul in it.
Right.
I get to play on other people's incredible music, but I can't relate 100% to every inch of it. Obviously you can if you've written something.
Right.
It's just more personal to you. So that's why I'm very thankful for the balance I have in my life with getting to do a little this, getting to do a little that. And, I mean, one of the reasons I remember looking forward to joining Beck in 97 is because I was coming off the tail of two of my personal bands that both of whom broke up, both of whom couldn't make a third record.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the hole financially, the record companies.
We
were exhausted from the road.
Yes.
I mean, it was super, super challenging. And here I was being invited to join a group that already had platinum albums, that already had proper money to tour. There were just so many aspects of seeing what happens when you get to the next level, so to speak.
Right.
And that was really fun to take more of a back seat and see, well, wow, what does the machine look like when everybody gets along in the band and the public buys your song and they want you on the other side of the world and there's thousands and thousands of people in this strange land. I wanted to see what that was all about. I know I didn't get to experience a lot of those things with my own groups, and here was an opportunity to do that. So that was part of the allure as well, and just helping to fulfill my dreams and fantasies that the other groups never could meet.
Mm-hmm. Because there is something to be said. Because I know, like I told you before, like even with me being a musician, like I've always, it's always been like my band. It's always been the band, that I wrote the songs and that I came up with whatever, and went to the band and we arranged them together. But the few times that I was ever able to be part of something where I was just a player, I just remember thinking like, this is kind of cool. It's kind of like riding in the back seat for once. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, it's kind of nice not to drive all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's like riding in the back seat if you trust the driver implicitly.
That's the key. That's the key, is trusting the driver. Yeah, like I wouldn't ride in the back seat with my mom. My wife, I would, but like I don't, my mom, no, not really. At least not now.
Yeah, there you go. And I mean, ideally, where that car is. You're excited where that car is taking a trip, and you can surrender. You are able to. I mean, one of the things that you're probably enjoying, certainly speaking for myself, is being able to surrender control because you have such faith in, again, who's at the wheel and where the car is headed. You don't have to spend any energy trying to pull the steering wheel away from somebody you don't trust or you don't believe in 100% as far as the vision and what the record company wants for you versus what you want, all those kinds of things.
So with that being said, there's also this other balance of like, when you do your own thing, sometimes like when you have your bands, like in your case, like, you're doing the Roger Manning Jr. stuff, and you've picked a band and you've got a band of people that you can trust and you can kind of put that faith. Do you find that it's a much different feeling and a much different level of trust and maybe even confidence than say like when you were in Jellyfish, where things were always, maybe there was always a little bit of tension and pressure, whether it be from industry or each other?
Well, I mean, you figure things out the more and more you do them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just experience. I mean, if you give me the time machine, I could go back to any one of my early groups and I'd have 10 to 20 new ways and options and tools to get something accomplished.
Right.
That just comes from experience and maturity. But I still put the same goals and standards, expectations on myself that I have with any project. I just, again, through doing it so many times, I'm a little faster at different parts of it. And I certainly know how to communicate with people better than I did in my early 20s. And, convey a thought more of a concise, direct, communicative way. Those are basic skill sets that most young people don't have. Kind of learn them on the job. And along the way, you and a bunch of people get burned. It's not very enjoyable.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about like former bands of ours, and I was thinking of like, the last 2 or 3 bands I ever had. When I think about like why we broke up or why things didn't work, it always boils down to communication. Like like either I was afraid to say something, or I didn't say something and I internalized it for so long that it exploded. Whereas like now, like in my 40s, I'm like, you just say it, you know what I mean? And like, you just say it, but you say it compassionately and you act like adults. But like you said, when you're in your early 20s, that's kind of a hard thing to do, like especially when you're still trying to figure that kind of relationship out with people.
Right. Well, now you don't have to ask me the question, why did Jellyfish break up? You just answered it.
Right. Yeah. Which is actually, to be totally honest, which is funny, because that has always been like such a topic that people always discuss, like, well, what happened with Jellyfish? And I go, well, if you've ever been in a band that broke up, you know why Jellyfish split up. Because it's like this inevitable thing that happens when you're young, when you're playing music with each other. Because at the end of the day, we're all kind of socially awkward people we communicate through music. But then when we have to communicate through other ways, especially in our younger days, we just didn't know how to do it.
Well, very few of us have positive role models. Adults who are great communicators, and so we don't really learn that, and we take it into our own communities, whether it's the office place or our significant other relationships or whatever, and these patterns just keep repeating unless somebody or a group of people say, wait a minute, there's got to be a way to do it different, and let's go read some books, let's get some therapy, let's listen to some self-help tapes. I mean, there's no shortage of great toolboxes to explore, but it's not very often encouraged in our society. Or if you a lot of communities kind of frown upon that. Someone's actually trying to better themselves or get better at what they do, certainly on a personal and emotional level. And I'm sorry, but music is the art of emotional communication. You do it with an instrument in your hand, and you do it with your voice with lyrics. If you're not in touch with your emotions, you're going to be a shitty musician. I mean,
that's why you can spot a fake a mile away.
Well, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. They're not, and I'm not saying you have to be a master communicator with people. I'm saying you have to be in touch with your emotions and know how to bring them out through your voice or your instrument. Now, ideally, your relationships along the way are also enriched and nourished and enhanced because you are not afraid of your feelings. And you have what's called emotional literacy. Being a good musician is simply emotional literacy. And again, I really hope they're teaching this at Berklee and all the other music schools, because you're not going to produce a complete and well-rounded artist when they graduate if you don't have a course like that. And of course they don't. I'm being facetious. that stuff's imperative.
No, it totally is, because, and I've thought about this a lot, because, I don't know if you saw the Metallica documentary years ago that came out. That was Some Kind of Monster, where it was basically like, Metallica was like on the verge of breaking up, and they brought in a therapist. And I just remember young me going, how fucking lame, dude. Like, if you can't keep your own fucking band together, but now, like, here I am, like, I'm 44. I go to a therapist, like twice a month, and I go, wow. I mean, to care about something so much, like that you to bring someone in to try to fix something, like, but you're right, it's integral. They don't teach you that, like when they give you a guitar, or like,
Yeah, right.
Like when we first picked up our guitars, it's kind of like having a baby. It didn't come with an instruction manual that said, hey, guess what? People are going to be assholes, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with them. And like, you're going to have to learn how to, like, not get your way all the time, and like not argue, and how to, civilly argue with people, it's like, we don't get, it's like we had to learn that over the course of years,
Yeah. And you've got a thing called an ego, and that's fine, but you have to learn how to keep it in check, and you have to learn the difference between when your ego's talking and when your heart's talking, because they're two different things. And all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing a variety of therapists for the last, 10 years or something. Yeah. And Imperial Drag had a therapist that I have to give the record company credit for. Uh-huh. The A&R guy was like, I don't know, I want to give this another chance, and we'll pay for it. And I couldn't argue with that. Ultimately, we decided to go our separate ways, but I actually really... And I think I can speak for the other guys in the band. I think we really valued that month or so where we sought some outside guidance, so it's just what you value and how much do you want to expand as a person on all levels.
And I love that you touched on the fact that about that that you see therapy and stuff, because we have seen a lot of issues, especially in the music industry over the past few years, especially the past year or so, with mental health being such a big thing in the industry and whatnot. And I don't think people realize sometimes that the amount of mental and emotional stress that we as musicians kind of go, it's why we create, it's like you get this great end product, but you don't always get to see what it is that created that product, and what that product was, or what might have created that product was like a series of like, fucking anxiety attacks in a bathroom. You know what I mean? Well, but it turned into a great fucking song, but people don't see that. And so, like, it's always refreshing to hear someone acknowledge that aspect of it,
Absolutely. We are highly emotional, feeling, energetic creatures, and that's why music speaks to everybody on some level. That's why people always joke. I mean, they'll say, or I say to them, they say, oh, well, I can't dance, or some people can dance and some people can't. I'm like, well, in my opinion, it just depends what role models you had in your life that said it was okay to dance, that it was okay to flail about like a complete idiot if you want, because you felt moved by some music you were hearing, or wherever you were, at a party or at church or in a music store, whatever it was. Yeah. And I said, well, I can't dance. I have no sense of rhythm. Right, because you haven't been shown how to tap into your natural rhythm. I believe having natural rhythm, that's the thing. Again, I think everybody relates to music because it's part of our DNA. Rhythm and melody, all those things are inherent to living in this body and our spiritual essence. It just, as a child, you either had positive role models that showed you how to demonstrate that. And maybe some of those positive role models actually had a good sense of rhythm already. So when they danced, it was on the beat, and they were clapping their hands on the 2 and 4, and they were groovy. You know, they were grooving.
Oh, right.
You either had that or you didn't. But just because you didn't have it doesn't mean it's not too late to tap into that and learn.
It's never too late, because, you know, I grew up with two of the whitest parents that had, like, no soul, no groove at all. But the first time I saw Fish in, like, 1995, and I saw people dance, I was like, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, let me just kind of loosen up and see what happens. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, there it is. And then all of a sudden you just realize, like, you know, I can just feel the music and just move. And, oh, I'm dancing. It was like such a, like, I hate to say that, but it was such like a white boy discovery thing, you know? It was like, wait, I can do this. And kind of flail my arms and jig back and forth, you know?
It can absolutely be cultural. I mean, you just said it. I mean, you know, a Fish concert, and I've never been, but I certainly have had friends who enjoy that community. It is another form of church, right? Because, I mean, the only reason you started moving around is because you basically said, you know what, I don't really give a damn what anybody thinks of me, and I don't feel like I'm in an arena here where I'm going to be judged.
Right.
It's like, no. I'm just going to relax, let the music take me where it takes me, and next thing you knew, your body was moving around. You know, versus if you'd grown up in, I don't know, a Southern Baptist church or something, and every Sunday from infancy, you saw people singing their hearts out, the top of their lungs, dancing in church, doing it. You know, again, it's encouraged, and you would have felt safe in that environment, dancing around. I encourage people to continue to not be afraid and to explore that, because those emotions want to be expressed in healthy and responsible and safe and exciting ways. And if they're not, that heartbreak and that joy and those tears and that laughter, it's going to come out someplace else. But hopefully it comes out in a positive way. I mean, that's, you know, music, even all the hip hop that I don't care for because it's so misogynistic and so just hard and edgy and
violent a lot of times.
Violent and depressing. It's not necessarily a celebration of life, in my opinion. However, it's still a fairly productive way to have emotional release versus young men fighting or you know, it at least is some kind of pressure release valve for emotions being expressed, even if that emotion is anger or hate. I'd rather it come out in the music than you know, man hurting man kind of ways.
Well, you know, because we had talked about previously about, like, you know, our love for metal. But anyway, you know, but like, you know, like I remember that, you know, being a young kid in the mosh pit, like, and remember what it felt like to be in the mosh pit and to be like, oh, it's like such a release. But, like, you know, I wasn't getting the crap beat out of me. I wasn't punching anything. I wasn't, like, destroying anything. It was like this way of, you know, getting it out. But then I also remember seeing Jellyfish at the Cotton Club, like, not long after seeing, like, you know, a metal show, and then everybody's just kind of rocking back and forth, you know what I mean? And I'm going, oh, this works too. You know?
No, you're absolutely right. I loved being in the mosh pit, knowing that I was getting some energy out instead of some jock beating me up in the PE room.
Oh, like, totally. Absolutely. That's a great way, yeah.
This is so much more healthy and productive, and there's just this, I love that, you know, because I was talking about before with you, there's more of the earlier hardcore scene in America, and I just love that there were a lot of, you know, tough, rough and tumble guys at these male-dominated shows, and there was this camaraderie there. Oh, you want a stage dive? Here, let me help you up on stage.
Right.
Oh, you're going to flail yourself 10 feet off the stage? Well, we're not going to catch you, but we're kind of going to brace you so you fall, you don't kill yourself on the way down, you know. I was just blown away. And the whole thing was like, well, we're all doing this because we kind of get why you're here. It's like, you may not feel this camaraderie and support at your local high school. we know what it's like to be an outsider that way. But here at this club, with this crazy ass band and these crazy ass fans, you're amongst your own kind of thing. I mean, it was kind of gang mentality in the best, most positive sense of the word, and I don't even like that term really.
Right.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, but don't you feel like that too? Like back in the day, in the live entity of Jellyfish, that you guys even tried to create something very similar. Where like I remember telling friends, especially when you guys were doing the Spilt Milk tour, where you kind of had the stage set up that kind of looked like a bedroom. You know, you had the light bright and stuff like that. You know, and I just remember thinking like, I feel like I was just invited to like kind of like this kind of cool nerd party in a basement where we were watching a band play, you know, like.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I feel like that was something that you guys kind of strived to do in your own way that a lot of the bands that were your peers in the more pop rock thing kind of missed, you know, where you guys actually really did create a subculture of sorts, you know, which is probably why your fans have lasted for so long.
Totally. And just to let you know, I've got about 4 minutes here because Amanda's got another interview lined up for me.
Absolutely. Well, look, we can wind it down right now. Because what I want to say is one thing is that are you going to tour for this EP?
Probably not any kind of official tour. I'm certainly playing live, but it's going to be, that remains to be seen because it's going to be scattered and getting myself outside of Los Angeles. It just takes a lot of money because I'm not doing it by myself. I have some kind of backup band.
Right.
And it's just getting that machine out financially is it just takes funding. And I've been very happy with the funding to come in for the EP and making the pledge campaign work, but it's a lot more dollars to get a group of guys, to not be sleeping on their friend's floor across. Plus, I'm just not going to do that anymore. I did that in my 20s, and I can't ask me or any of my friends to do that. We're all in our 40s, so.
No, man. I have to sleep on my back on a mattress. Like, I can't do floors or, like, vans, so.
Yeah, not going to happen. So now what I do plan on doing is filming not only live concerts, but even maybe like a private, very detailed and specialized live show that I can then, like, share with people.
Oh, now that would be great. That would be great, like a DVD of sorts or something, maybe, or
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
See, that would be awesome, man. Well, look, Rod, I'm not going to hold you any longer, but I'm just going to say, dude, it's such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, man. All right, bye-bye.